Hi, Sifu Boggie here again, and welcome to another show of The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, a show on mind, body and spirit, a mixture of science and spirituality. Each week we have a guest and we find out their Tao, their way, their path, their balance. So, each week we explore a new guest and we find out what makes them tick, what works for them, and hopefully some of these things will work for you. So this week, as always, we have the gracious, the wonderful Q, aka Ethan.
Hi.
We also have now a new co-host, the very good, the very mystical with questions, the questioner, aka Chris.
Hello.
And this week, and of course myself, Paul Brighton, aka Sifu Boggie. And this week, the show is about Daniel. I've done it again. The name Daniel Alcyone. So, Daniel, thank you so much for joining the show. It's very, very nice to meet you. And so, what is your way? What are you all about?
If I was to put my way into two words, it would be ecstatic existence. I'm about the way of ecstatic existence, which is to be fully alive in every single moment. So this comes through an integration of body, mind, and spirit. This comes through radical self-love and joy in every single moment.
How does radical self-love manifest for you?
How does radical self-love manifest for me?
Indeed.
Well, the most basic way is sometimes you have to start with the knots. You have to start with the negative of like, what am I not doing, right? And then after you get all the, I'm not doing these any longer, you can move into active, proactive packages and movements. So the not doing is eliminating negative self-talk. This is radical self-love, is being absolutely diligent about only speaking to yourself and thinking about your own person in the positive. So if the tiniest moment of self-doubt or criticism or the not good enoughs or the I'm too much, that bullshit comes in, you got to just get it out immediately. You need to find the healing belief that will replace that mistaken belief, usually from a wounded child. So that's the first step of radical self-love, is being diligent about I will not do these things. I will not compromise myself in this way, this way, this way. Now you've established ground rules of what not to do. Now you can start incorporating things that really suit you and really serve you. Using your radical self-love as like maintaining a spiritual practice, as in dedicating time to yourself to do things that you absolutely love, that actually nourish your inner child. Like for me, I like to go out in the forest and play and literally stack stones and like make forts and like build things with trees for no other purpose than just for me. And so that is a form of radical self-love, because it doesn't rely on anybody else. It doesn't rely on anybody else's satisfaction. This is about me taking care of me. And that's a form of radical self-love.
That's fantastic. So what other practices do you have? Do you have a daily devotion?
Oh man, how long do you got? We only have a 2-hour show, right? So, I have quite a few daily practices. I have quite a bit of ritual in my life. Ritual is very important, especially in this day and age. We've lost our ritual. The biggest ritual that it seems like most people have is like plugging in their cell phone every night and putting it right beside their bed on their little digital altar space. So ritual's super important to me. I have several rituals that I have channeled and brought through myself that are important in my daily life. And I also have a number of lineage rituals that have been handed down to me through specific spiritual lineage teachings. So I incorporate these throughout all moments of my life. When I wake up, before I leave the house, I have a wonderful shielding and grounding practice that I do. Usually, I live on a boat. Maybe you can see my steering wheel back here, my helm. So sometimes walking my dog out down the docks and heading up to the land, I have a shielding and grounding practice. It doesn't even need to be super formal. Sometimes it's pretty casually done while walking the dog. And yeah, these things really make a huge difference in my life. I have a yoga practice, a really regular yoga practice. I have a meditation practice.
That's fantastic. I've noticed that. Oh, were you going to say, Boggie?
I was just going to say, it sounds you've... For me, everything goes to... I'm very much in the Eastern practices, so for me, it's very much everything goes to the Tao, the way, the path. And you've found Tao, you've definitely found a path because of the fact of, obviously, the walking dog, that's the physical exercise side. That can also be classed as the Qigong. You have the meditation, which is the Shen, the spirit, and you have the yoga, which in Tai Chi and Qigong, there's Neigong, which is, a version of yoga. So, yeah, you definitely have the system set in place. And also to the point where you're saying, like, you've got your own grounding techniques. And the fact that you're living actually on the water, which is about as cool as you can get, apart from living up a mountain, maybe. But you have, because the water energy obviously is very flowing, and therefore with the water, it generates, the whole thing of the ocean, it generates, clears the air and clears out negative particles in the air. And in the Eastern philosophy, that is clearing out the char within the air. So living within the ocean, or living on the ocean, or near the ocean sea, you have the clearing of the char from the air. And then when you go to the woods, or if you go to a wooded area, forests, then you have the purification of the energy from trees and whatnot. And as you have a dog, that means you've got to do regular exercise. So, Ethan, you had a question. I
was curious what brought you here, what brought you to this place in your life where your journey began. Because I'm of the opinion, and I stole the idea from Joseph Campbell, totally own up to it. The difference between a priest and a shaman is the priest is trying to share other people's religious experiences, and the shaman has had their own religious experiences. So the shaman's reality is based in truth, and their practices are based in truth. So I'm wondering, what are the truths that brought you to the practices that you have, and to the devotions that you have, and to the place in your existence that you've come to?
That is a fantastic question. So,
thank you.
from a very young age, from childhood, I've always been a cosmic kid. I've always been a little mini mystic, and I grew up in a Christian household. This it totally didn't work for me. I didn't find any resonance with the teachings that I was receiving, if you could call them teachings. It was very much steeped in dogma and not practicality, or there was zero magic. There's absolutely zero magic in the world. And so I would begin exploring deeper and deeper into alternative modalities, like exploring the tarot, exploring dream exploration and symbology, beginning to meditate and look into the Tao and experience some Zen philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. So started cultivating all of these different ideas and concepts. And then, again, we only have a 2-hour show, depending on how long we want to talk about just my footsteps in life. I ended up becoming really jaded, really just pissed off about everything. I was a serious punk rocker. I was a pissed off punk for years, and basically had a lot of anger inside about any and everything that I was seeing around me as, quote, the system. The politics weren't working for me. The religious systems weren't working for me. The food systems, the music, anything I could think of, I wanted something different. But I didn't know how to call that in. And I didn't know how to do that in a healthy way. So it was all resistance. It was all fuck this, fuck that. But there was no love. There was nothing to replace it in with something that I was really, truly passionate about and connected to. So all of this ended up leading me to a point where I got I got married young and dumb the first time through. And I started to allow my spiritual self to die. It withered on the vine. So now all of these like weird esoteric things that I had always been into just started shriveling up, and the life was getting sucked out of it. And so through this time where I allowed myself to get into this passionless marriage, this very dead marriage, that whole end of me died so far that I got to kind of a quarter life crisis and basically almost had a snapping point where I needed something else. And I didn't know what it was. I just knew I needed out, dissolved that marriage, and then very shortly after started calling back in a spiritual practice, discovered yoga. Basically, yoga found me. I was at a festival, a local conscious festival, and I looked across the field and I saw a couple doing AcroYoga, but I didn't even know what it was. And so the guy, it's like sunny and beautiful, and there's all these gorgeous people around, and this guy's laying on his back with his hands up in the air, and this beautiful pixie woman is standing in his hands and like doing a sun salute and like bowing, and they're doing all these moves together. And it just stopped me in my tracks. Sat down and I just started watching them for like at least half an hour as they played and moved together. And then I went up and talked to him. I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is this thing that I'm seeing? I've never seen anything like it before. And they're like, oh, well, this is acrobatic yoga. This is AcroYoga. And all of a sudden this light bulb went off, because I'd always been the warrior. I'd always been of the martial art aspect. I mean, I spent years working at a martial arts supply store. So I was like a ninja, you know, I have like mad nunchuck skills, you know? So here I was, this like ninja mindset, and all of a sudden I'm seeing somebody that's doing yoga and like, oh, that's yoga? I didn't even know that was within the realm of yoga. I had no idea. It would look like circus arts, you know? So a spark lit up inside of me. I went back home and I found a local yoga studio that was close to me, and I started taking every class. I just started going nonstop to this yoga studio. Fast forward 1 full year later, now all of a sudden I've developed a personal yoga practice and a meditation practice. And so I go to the same festival next calendar year, and wouldn't you know, I see a whole different couple doing AcroYoga. But this time I've gained enough confidence within myself to go up and ask to try it. And so I'm like, hey, can I try this with you? Like, oh, sure. And the next thing you know, I have a new passion in my life. I absolutely love it. And I started taking everything I learned and teaching it to others. I have this innate built-in teaching thing. I have to teach other people. I just have to do it. And so as soon as I was learning something, I was finding other people to share it with, and like, oh, you got to try this. It's so cool. And the next thing you know, I was developing an entire community around me. I created an entire scene and community in the city I was living in. And through meetup groups and free gatherings and whatnot. Anyway, fast forwarding that, through yoga, through AcroYoga, I ended up really finding my own deep spirituality. I ended up calling in the love of my life, my wife and partner, Rachel. And so we ended up becoming teachers together. We taught together for several years. And then through her and her spiritual practices and her background in healing, ended up getting introduced to new things like group therapy modalities and, you know, all kinds of different ways to heal the inner child and to fix those mistaken beliefs of the wounded inner child. Then recently have really found a new home in my spiritual practice as I have discovered a new path for myself through the Kabbalah. I've been studying the Kabbalah quite extensively in a year-long ascension program, and I've actually re-upped, and so now I'm currently in the very top of one tree and the very bottom starting a new tree at the same time. And Kabbalah has become a new lifelong study for me. So I'm on about probably a 5-year arc to become an international Kabbalah teacher. And that's awesome. A new system that's integrating all the other systems for me. So now the Kabbalah has taken in the Tao, has taken in the Zen, has taken in the yoga, the yogic philosophies, and given me a structure that I can have everything fit together for the first time in my life. So that's in a nutshell, in a nice nutshell, there's my path that has led me to where I am.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Right. Chris, questioner, do you have one?
Wow, there was just so much information there. I mean, wow. You talked right back at the beginning about helping yourself, healing yourself, and I was wondering, was the driver just to help yourself, or was it to because you talk about teaching, so is that healing yourself, is that part of healing others as well, or by healing yourself first, or?
Yes, I think that isn't, I won't say that's the initial drive. My drive wasn't necessarily to teach others, but my innate makeup, like the chemistry and the buildup that I have, is to share and to teach. And so as soon as I have acquired a specific skill set or knowledge, it's very important for me to be the spreader of that knowledge and help other people find it. Okay? So not so much, quote, showing them the way, but being a bit of a guide and opening the door for other people and say, hey, look what's out there. You can go look through this too. You can have that accessible to you. But I would not say that that was the initial goal. The initial goal was literally, like I say, ecstatic existence, was to find more joy and bliss and peace in my life, which some people may even, feel is like a selfish thing in this society. If you take care of yourself too much, it's a problem. But you think of this, anytime you're on an airplane, right, they tell you, put your own air mask on first, then take care of everybody else. You need to get your shit fixed before you can help anybody. So
yeah,
that's how it happened, man. I have to fix myself first, and then once I'm okay, I can now help other people fix themselves.
That's I do find that an interesting concept with other people. You hear other people say, "Oh, you're so what." You say that you're so selfish, but that's the fundamentals in Buddhism, in Taoism, in fundamentals in ancient knowledge. Before you can help anybody else, if that's your goal, before you can help anybody else, you have to help yourself. You have to sort yourself out first. That's the center of the wheel. You are the center of the wheel. You're the center of your own universe. You're the star in your own story. And you have to be sorted. You have to go through the heroic journey, the hero's journey. You have to be, on that path yourself before you can help everybody else. I will add, one of the Taoist sayings is that the best way to improve your own skills is to teach others, which I find people have become teachers because it's from teaching they actually understand their own practices a lot better. And if you're really passionate about what you do, then that is a good teacher. There are some people that are good at what they do but are not passionate about teaching, and therefore that passion doesn't transfer over. But if you're passionate about what you do and you're passionate about sharing it, which you obviously are from the way you're saying the things and from your energy, from your vibration, you can hear, it is as much as, or at least my perception of you is, it is as important for you to share what you have found for yourself as it is for doing it for yourself. That thing of you must, try this. I mean, it's really cool for me, but the Bruce Lee would say, actually no, the camera's facing in a different direction. There's a saying with Bruce Lee is the finger pointing towards the moon, and that's what a good teacher does. It doesn't tell you what to do, points the finger towards the moon for you to see all that heavenly glory. And that sounds what you're doing with your practice. Now, I've got a question. For those who don't know Kabbalah.
Sorry, Boggie, you broke up there.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yes. The question was, for those who don't know, what is Kabbalah?
Oh, man, one more time. We only got 2 hours.
Yeah, we don't. Sometimes we've had 4-hour shows before. It's cool. We're like that. Yeah. Go for it.
But, man, this is your show, okay? So, if you want to be here till midnight your time, that's fine by me. We may have to edit it at the end, but yeah, seriously, we have done 4-hour shows, haven't we, Ethan?
Yeah, we did a 4-hour
I
show.
do remember a 4-hour show. So you got all the time in the world. Well, unless you've got to go somewhere. So what is it? Let the people know.
Okay, great. And I'd like to preface this whole segment here talking about the Kabbalah by saying that I'm still a student. You know, I'm a total student of life, and I've only been studying the Kabbalah for about 1 year, which in the grand scheme of things is not much. That means I know just enough to know that I don't know anything, okay? So the Kabbalah is a system. It's a living, breathing system that moves with you in your life, that helps you classify and organize energies and connect with those specific energies in a way that you can fulfill your life's purpose, in a way that you can truly know yourself, okay? So the Kabbalah centers around a specific glyph. It's one specific symbol known as the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is designed into 10 spheres, or sephira. And these spheres are similar, for those who have never heard about this before, they're similar to the chakras. It's similar to the chakra system, but not quite. It's very different, but that's as close as you can identify with. These are they're simultaneously energy centers of the physical body, of the human body. They're also experiential dimensions. So there's a dimensionality to it, and all of these things are actually happening all at the same time and all within each other. It's very fractal, it's very expansive. The Kabbalah deals with primarily answering these 5 questions. Who am I? What am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And what is my purpose in life? The Kabbalah, studying the Kabbalah will help you answer those 5 questions. Now, keeping in mind, it isn't like you just get answers to those 5 questions and then they're concretized for the rest of your life. These will move and change. But at any moment, if somebody asks you, who are you? What is your purpose in life? Where did you come from? Where are you going? You will have an answer to that question immediately in your back pocket. That's what the Kabbalah will help you do in practice in your life. It also acts as a shall I say, telephone system. It acts as a telegraph, but now I want to say like a FaceTime. It acts as FaceTime between you and the divine. This gives you actual channel connection to the divine in a way that we don't normally experience through tried and tested methodology and technique. The Kabbalah was actually handed down to humanity through the angels. So at many different times in the course of humanity, it's actually said that the tablets that Moses brought down from the mountain, one of them contained the Tree of Life. One of them contained the Kabbalah. So there's the 10 Commandments, and then there's another tablet that is the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah, which is the actual practical science. It's a science of applicability of technique and energy towards us reaching the divine. Now, to keep going, that's one direction. As you ascend the Tree of Life going up, which is the process that I've been in through the Modern Mystery School over the last year, is a Kabbalah Ascension program, and I've just re-upped and started another ascension on top of it. That is us ascending ourselves from base level density, as in our meat suit, this body we're wearing and our spirit is in, ascending up towards divinity and towards connecting with God, connecting with the creative force of the universe, okay? Now, coming down the same pattern, the exact same pattern, the Tree of Life, is the map in which all things come into physical manifestation. So we're talking the pre-manifest, the intangible, the pre-idea, the initial spark before an idea even occurs, moving from that into, like this ring on my finger, or this table in front of me, or anything in the physical world, or any of us, our physical bodies, right? There was a map of different stages of creation and manifestation that energy moved through, from raw, unadulterated energy to dense physicality in the material world. Okay? So on one direction, it's us ascending towards God, and on the other direction, it is the unlimited possibility of God transitioning down into physical form. How's that?
It's a pretty good explanation. I liked it. I wanted to add something real quick about being selfish. If you look at the work of Marshall Rosenberg, which I think everybody should, it's being selfish is, you can't really be selfish. Being selfish is a moralistic judgment that you can put on other people, but it's technically impossible to be selfish without casting judgment. So you can focus more on your needs than other people's needs, but selfishness is a concept that only comes into play when you have a preconceived concept about how someone should be spending their time or someone should be spending their energy, and then you disagree with that, so you judge them as wrong, and that's how selfishness, the word selfishness, comes about. Technically, otherwise it can't exist. And you find this
I love that.
in certain cultures where they don't. Like, I think it's been going around on Facebook for a while. Some tribes in Africa, when someone does something wrong, they gather around the person and sing songs and tell them all the good things about themselves, because they believe it is that they've done something wrong because that being is in pain. And you will find built into the sentence, into the language, into the linguistic structure of their language, that they will not use words like selfish. They will not use words that are like that. And the closest thing that they can even translate it to is, you're spending a lot of time focusing on this person's needs, and I would like you to spend more time focusing on that person's needs. But there's a whole different energy that goes into it when you, instead of saying, you're selfish because you take care of yourself, the difference between that and I would like to see you try and spend more time helping other people than taking care of yourself, the energy is completely different. And also there's a great holistic healer named Paul Chek, who I highly recommend everybody check out if you feel so inclined. And he is a big fan of, and I absolutely agree with him, that to be able to be, we're completely responsible for 50% of any relationship that we're in, hands down. We're responsible for 50% of the relationship with our cat, our dog, any other human. If you can't bring 100% of yourself to that relationship, so if you can't bring your healthy self, your educated, your energetic self, your full energetic self, however you need to do, whatever you need to do to take care of that, you are not bringing 100% of your game to any relationship. So every relationship that you are in, you are in fact doing a disservice to that relationship. So someone might be mad at you because you spend all this time doing energy work on yourself because you're not spending enough time with them. But really, if you don't do the energy work on yourself, you're taking away from that relationship, because that person isn't going to get the whole you that they could be getting, because they'll be getting a fractured version of you. You won't be able to bring 100% of yourself to that relationship.
Yeah,
I waited 15 minutes, Boggie. I'm done.
That's totally fantastic. And one thing that stands out to me in this whole thing is, I totally agree with you, is even the idea of selfishness is me, somebody, imposing my ideas of what another person should do or should not do. And so absolutely. I like to just say, don't should on me, bro.
Totally.
Don't should on me. Don't should on yourself, because as soon as you should on somebody else, you're instantly applying that what they're doing is not correct.
Yes.
Don't should on me, bro. Don't should on me.
No, but that's the whole Bruce Lee thing of a See, for me, this is why I prefer the name Sifu. So I use Sifu Boggie. I don't use sensei, I don't use master. It's Sifu. Sifu means a parent who guides. So it's parent teacher. So somebody who lovingly guides that person. And if you're a good enough parent, the whole idea is you coerce, you guide, you as a muse, you give the ideas, you point people in the direction, rather than a certain parent that tells you what to do. The idea is that you guide somebody in the direction of these things. And the best way to guide somebody is if you're doing them and it makes you really happy, and you can blooming tell that your stuff makes you really happy. So, well, if that makes you happy for you, could it make me happy? And that's a good way of guiding people, to get people to try it and to play. I think you mentioned it as well, this whole thing of play. We tend to forget as adults, we've got this whole serious thing going on, that we have to be serious and sensible. And one of the things for me that comes from the Tao is the whole thing is to take responsibility like an adult, but play like a child. So the whole idea is take the mickey, have fun, play, you know, do silly things, you know, a show. Don't, you know, one thing I don't want is anybody think I take myself too seriously. In fact, on my blogs, on my vlogs on YouTube, right at the beginning, I have this little app that does cartoon characters, and they're all different things. And like, you know, I'll have a face of a polar bear or face of a panda, and for about 15 seconds, I'll just go, "Hello, Kung Fu Panda here," and just the whole point is yeah, there is wisdom in the things I say, but you should have fun with wisdom. It shouldn't all be serious. You know, you should have as much fun in your life as also have the passion of take things seriously, but serious fun rather than just seriousness. If that makes sense.
No, man, that makes a lot of sense. And so here's the thing. This is one of the main reasons why our modern education systems in America are failing our people, that people don't have basic life skills when they leave school and they graduate, right? Is because when we learn things, many times it's in the head, it's in the mind. There's a mental aspect to learning something. But when we have fun, it comes from the heart. When we're playing, it comes from the heart. And so something can come in the mind. You can memorize all the 50 states, all the order of the presidents, blah, 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 blah. You can memorize all this. It's just going to go in and out. It's never going to anchor itself. So that's this floating thing up here in the mind. To drop it down to the heart and anchor it, that's what makes it last. And so that happens when you have fun, when you laugh during learning. So, okay, I'm learning all the 50 states, all the presidents, blah, blah, blah. Can you make a game out of it? Can you make some kind of like a thing that's going to be fun? Guess what? Now you're going to remember for the rest of your life. It's anchored into the heart.
Mythology works the same way. That's why Aboriginal cultures in general teach with mythology, is because I can still remember myths that I was told as a young kid. And I remember the moral of it. It's because it activates the other side of your hemisphere, the other hemisphere of your brain. It gives you something concrete to grab onto instead of, I mean, even it's so well renowned that even the Christians use parables. I mean, and they're renowned for not doing things in the optimal way. So, you know, like great stories about Jesus. Like one of my favorite stories about Jesus is the 3 temptations of the devil, where he tempted his mind, his body, and his spirit. And my favorite example is in that story is when the devil takes him to, I forgot what holy building, and tells him to jump off because the power of your spirit will let you soar. And Jesus basically says, no, because I'm still human. You know, I recognize that I am the Son of God and I am still holy, but I am still incarnate. So I need to honor that and recognize that. So the deeper message that allows us to incorporate and to assimilate so much better than just don't be so religious that you're useless. I mean, that doesn't really sink in, but you hear a story, you hear a parable, you hear Native American stories about the animal people. You know, those will stick with you infinitely longer and be infinitely easier to digest and understand because of the way they affect your consciousness. Somebody else's turn.
Indeed. Right.
Ooh.
So, yep. Yes. So let's see. What's questioner? Have you any questions?
Oh, I've got plenty of questions. You talked earlier about like daily practices or rituals. I just really wanted to explore that a little bit more, because very much from the stuff I'm learning from Boggie, there's a bit that's like going with the flow. So does that fit in with the daily practices and rituals for you as well?
Yes, well, there's a little bit of both. So part of incorporating ritual into your life is doing something with regularity, even if you don't necessarily feel like it. You're like, you know, oh, I'm going to do a daily meditation practice. I'm just, even like 10 minutes. I'm going to do 10 minutes every morning, blah, 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 before I do anything else. And then you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, I don't feel like doing it right now. So part of it is doing it anyway. Part of that ritual practice is actually following through and holding yourself to an accountability of pattern and regularity, right? But then on the other hand, there is a going with the flow, because you may just feel a divine spark to move into a ritualistic mode, right? You may actually, I might be out in the woods, like I say, and all of a sudden just feel called upon to start calling on the directions just because of a whim, because I feel that it's the time to do that. So there's a little bit of both, but I think typically with even the word ritual has a bit of formality to it. So it's a little solidified and not so open, you know? When something's fluid, I just don't know if it's quite a ritual. A ritual means repeatability. And so there is both.
I think, yeah. My viewpoint, or the Taoist viewpoint, when Chris is saying about like going with the flow, is your ritual of you do meditation every day, you do qigong every day, you do stretching every day, which in the 3-1 viewpoint, the Taoist viewpoint, you want to do those 3 at least every day. But the going of flow is a little bit of like spontaneous movement with like your yoga. You're not doing exactly the same position every time. You will move from one to the other. The ritual is the practice, but what you actually practice itself can be fluid, if that makes sense. So the idea of you don't necessarily have to do the same thing every single day, or only do, say, a 9-count breath meditation every single day, or a belly breathing meditation every day, or whatever your standard meditation is. You can mix it about, and or do it at different times. So the ritual is the practice, but the fluid side, the going with the flow side, is the play. With the childlike being in play, is you don't have to do the same thing all the time. Saying that, I have done for 34 years, I have done a qigong energy exercise called twist the waist, willow tree qigong, and I've done it religiously, if I'm pardon pun of using that word, but I have done it religiously for 34 years, and the whole point in the context of is that with one exercise, if you do it long enough and you do it constant enough, you can learn far more from that one exercise than you can learn from doing 50 different exercises over a period of time, because that one thing will always reveal new things. So yes, there is a constant there. There is a ritual there, but the whole going with the flow is this making it fun, making it enjoyment. And like you say, you might get up and you think, I don't really fancy like doing it now. So, well, why don't I do this instead? Or why don't I do this version? Why don't I do? And so, having that fluidity, having that childlike, that play, to make it keep fueling your heart, your passion for that thing. Rather, some people, they might like that one thing all the time, and that's fine, that's cool. If you want to do it only in one way all the time, that's cool. What I would suggest is doing that one way, but also add on every now and again, do it a different way as well, so you're adding to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
my turn. Okay.
I've seen you waiting there. I've seen you just sitting there and like moving.
Yeah. You see, it's like that little goblin. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes.
Okay, so my experience with daily devotion and daily dedication is I've been working out religiously for about 11 years now. And I've been holding down a consistent Qigong practice for about, will be 2 years. So I've had my revelations that really helped me with this are things along the lines of like, as far as when it comes to physical training, the universe and your body doesn't care what excuse you have. You're still going to get weaker if you don't work out. And that was a really great lesson for me, was of that the universe, it kind of goes almost into the sacred violence thing that we've talked about in the past, where the universe doesn't care. And that's a form of compassion. The universe is like, well, either you're going to play this game or you're not going to play this game, and there's no in-between grounds. So keeping that in mind, I found is very, very helpful for me, realizing that I can make up 1,000 excuses, good reasons, but ultimately, if I want this thing, I'm not going to get it unless I take these action steps. When your dream, Paul Chek talks about it, when your dream is bigger than your problems, your dream will always succeed. So if you can find your dream and you can hook, like let's say your desire is to, let's say you have some health problem, like a digestion issue. Your goal is to, your dream is to not wake up in the morning and feel like shit from your digestion issue. If you can keep that in mind when you go into your daily practice, that I'm doing this as a form of helping me heal from this problem, that will give you a lot more motivation. And I always find that I like to think of ideas and practices as like a bird in a cage. If you're holding a wounded bird, I don't know if any of you, I grew up with chickens and spent time around other kinds of birds. You have to hold them tight enough that their wings won't open, but you can't hold them too tight because their bones are really brittle because their bones are hollow because they're birds. So there's this balance that you have to learn. This all goes back to Taoism and learning the balance of holding an idea tight, but not too tight. Like, when I get up in the morning, I have an idea of when I'm going to try and do my daily Qigong, but a lot of times something else will get in the way. However, I will make sure that I keep that as a high enough priority that a lot of times I do construction. I do a 10-hour day of construction and I go to my storage unit and do Qigong because it's the only place that I can find to have peace. And sometimes it's 10 o'clock at night and sometimes I have to go to bed later. But I'm willing to do that because I recognize that this is something that I need to be doing. So you hold on to this idea and you kind of allow it to be and you allow it to breathe. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have the concrete will to make it happen. I really like the analogy of look at a stream. You know, you look at the stream and it's soft and it's burbling and it's going along doing its thing. But if you jump into that stream too deeply, you're going to hit the rocks on the bottom. So there's that hardness. There's the yang underneath the yin. So you try and go with the yin of the flow, but you have the hardness of spirit and you have the hardness of discipline and dedication to carry you through when you need it. So a lot of days, you know, your Qigong will work out fine. And other days you'll have to really fight for it. And recognizing the balance of when to fight and when to relax, when to allow and when to say, no, this isn't acceptable, to have discernment between the two, I've found to be. And also, you know, the thing that I really believe is why so many people don't like Taoism and have a hard time with Taoism on a general concept is because it's all situational specific. You have to have the integrity, the knowledge, the discipline, the dedication, and the discernment to find what is proper in every single situation. Because sometimes lying is the best course of action. Sometimes violence is the best course of action. We have stigmas and dogmas attached to those words and attached to those concepts. But there is a time where violence is absolutely 100% called for. Like if a dog is attacking you, you're going to just let the dog attack you? If you want to do that, I'm going to fight the dog personally. So ultimately, it's like you're holding this bird, this concept of your discipline in your hands and in your consciousness. So you start the day with holding it gently, and as that bird struggles, if it's trying to get away, you have to hold it tighter and tighter. Don't crush it, but always try and find the iron will to carry through whatever your greater purpose is, and try and remember what your greater goals in life are. You know, like I'm notorious for living in a spectacularly messy house because my priorities are to do Qigong and cook my own food from scratch and work out and meditate and be spiritual rather than vacuum the fucking rug, you know? So check in with your priorities about stuff. Check in where you're at with, you know, am I prioritizing things wrong? Am I more concerned about, you know, getting this need met or this need met? So it's ultimately, that's what I would have to say. Somebody else's turn. Go.
Just to be aware, it's all right, Daniel, your dog's safe. I'll keep Ethan away from it. He's not going to attack the dog.
She's a healer. She's not an attack dog anyway. She's a total healer. So no worries there.
Cool. Right. So, just throw it out there because we were talking about the Kabbalah. I sent you a link for you to look at. Not a link, a picture look at later. Are you aware of the fruit of life and the flower of life?
Oh yeah, it all ties in together, man. The seed, the flower, and the tree.
Indeed, they're all very powerful, all interconnected. So that's the great thing with the Kabbalah. Going back to that for a second, is the whole sacred. It's all part of the sacred geometry, and it's the whole point in that you can take that and you turn it a certain way. Actually, you turn it all the way around, and it eventually creates the flower life, which is the 64 circles, which is a very powerful symbol. And what a lot of people don't know is that the flower life, with the flower life, it has a yin, or you could say a masculine form. The flower life is also technically the Torah field, or the Triduum field of the body, turned slightly away, and when it folds into itself, it becomes the Torah. But the flower life, its yin would be the Merkaba, which was also in the Bible. I think it's David, the Saint David. He immortalized while still alive, and he was a chariot, a golden chariot called the Merkaba, came and picked him up and took him to heaven. And the Merkaba is a pyramid pointing up and a pyramid pointing down. Now, when you flip that into, or basic version is two pyramids, one pyramid pointing up, one pyramid pointing down. When you convert it into the next version of that, which is the tetrastahedron, which is 64 triangles or pyramids, 64 pyramids interlocked with like a square. So it's that Merkaba shape with the square around it. Now, when you have that actually as a model, like a wireframe model with glass, and you shine a light at the center, and you shine it through, its shadow creates the flower of life, the 64 circles. And from the flower of life, you can get the Kabbalah, the seed of life, the fruit of life, and everything else. So it's all very, very cool. I've probably just blown a few minds out there. Hey-ho. I normally do it to Chris all the time. I say, Chris, are you still there? No, I'm coming back.
One more little tiny beautiful layer to that whole piece you just gave us, Boggie, is that the flower of life is also cell division. It's also a zygote. So that is the point that the two cells have multiplied enough to actually be a foreseeable life form.
Yeah. Well, the really cool, in the show, I say this show is about science and the real science is that we've, got cameras, microscopes cool enough that they've actually seen, when the sperm and the egg create the embryo. Before the embryo, you actually get the cell division, and it actually goes through the sacred geometry, and it ends up just before it creates the embryo. It's the flower of life. It's 64 cells all combined, which then create the embryo. So like the flower of life, you will find in the sunflower, the actual sunflower itself, you will find the shape of it. There's actually certain plants or certain leaves that actually form on the ground, creating the flower life shape. And also from the flower life, when you put two circles together, and the circles join the center, and you create that eye shape. The eye shape is the Vesica Pisces. And the Vesica Pisces, the original fish shape in Christianity, the sacred sign, was not a fish with a tail, but it was, in actual fact, one and a half Vesica Pisces. So you've got one fish shape and half of one, which creates the secret symbol for Christianity. And that is supposed to be that the opening of the third eye is that the Vesica Pisces is the beginning of the opening gland, and then you go on to pineal glands and pine cones, which also talk about the third eye and the pineal gland, and then I go and blow somebody else's mind again. So
and then the eye of Ra, it looks just like the pineal gland, and how it has how it got ripped.
Well,
Thoth fixed it after the war between Ra and somebody else, and he put 60. There's 64 pieces, but he kept one out, and it breaks
64 pieces. 64
yeah,
triangles.
and it breaks down. If you look at the proportions, all of the proportions break down to the sacred pi, the 0.618 whatever and you can put it in the spiral that all four storms follow and all that sort of stuff too. It's all very cool.
And the other cool thing if you take the 64 lines of the I Ching, if you've heard the I Ching, so the broken and unbroken lines, they've taken those sets of 64 lines and they've put it in a computer, mucked around with it, and they found it creates a tetrastahedron. So it creates a tetrastahedron, and in ancient China, the dragon dogs were looked after the I Ching. They were the guardians of the I Ching, and under their foot or on their neck was a big ball, and that looked a temple. That ball is actually a 3D representation of the flower. And so all this ancient knowledge, and like you say with like the angels brought down the Kabbalah, and all this information, it's brought down from up above, where up above is. But the whole point, it's all interconnected. It's all giving you signs and hints and directions and points of view and information. It's all quite fun. But anyway, so let's carry on. Questioner, have you got a question?
Oh, yes. I want to get onto yoga because, like, I really love yoga, doing yoga myself. I haven't done aerobic. I haven't done the style of yoga you teach, but it looks so much fun. But I want to just ask this question quickly because you only touched on it earlier a little bit, and it's the word magic. So, what does that word mean to you? And is there some sort of examples you can give to us about magic? Because it's a bit of a woo-woo word that as soon as you start mentioning the word magic, people start going, ooh, okay. So what does that word mean for you?
Okay, that's a brilliant question, yeah. So it depends on if you're talking about magic, M-A-G-I-C, or if you put a K at the end. So magic.
I love you, Dan. Thank you very much. But continue. I'm sorry.
Magic with the C is illusion. Magic with the C is, a birthday party, a children's birthday party, pull a rabbit out of a hat, which is very impressive. It's very great. But there innately is some form of trickery at hand, okay? If you put a K at the end of that, which I have a video series, which maybe we could talk about this. I have a video series called The Magick Of Mudras that talks about specific mudras and hand positions that is really popular and gets into a lot of great stuff. If you put a K at the end of it, magic, M-A-G-I-C-K, now you're talking about actual transformation. You're talking about literal transformation. So it depends on what you're transforming. When you start talking magic, you're talking alchemy in a basic sense. They relate to each other, okay? And so in that transformation of this alchemical transformation, you're talking about providing a source material and then transmogrifying or transforming that into something different, because that energy or material does not die, it just transitions. And magic is the act of directing that transformation, okay? So when we talk magic, especially white magic, okay, we're looking at transforming energetics or patterns into something more positive. I'll give you a very base sense, super base level, okay? Actually, this isn't so base level. Now that I think about it, it's actually far more complex. But this is a good example. So I had a bit of a real tough time with my biological family, my biofam, okay? Didn't have good connections there, and through me being punk as fuck and doing my own thing, like completely split from them, okay? So then in trying to reconciliate, there was still a lot of bad blood. There was a lot of like weird tensions, and I felt I couldn't be myself around them, and it wasn't healthy. It just wasn't healthy, okay? So the magic that I had to work on this situation was a transformation. And in a transformation, the material that you bring to the cauldron, to this vessel of transformation, oftentimes has to be sacrificed, okay, in order to transition into something else. So I had to bring my story, my perpetual story of, oh, my parents didn't get me, they weren't there for me enough, blah, 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 blah. I had to bring that story into the cauldron and light that on fire. In the fire of destruction, in order to have, now I have zero emotional attachments to that. None. I've established healthy families, surrogates, you know, and I have zero emotional attachment to that old story anymore, because that story was keeping me back. Okay, it was holding me down. Anytime I would approach a situation and there would be a moment of self-limitation of, oh, my family unit wasn't strong, blah, blah, blah. There's the fucking story just chatting away. That was a limiting factor. So magic, it was an act of magic to actively go in there and remove that from my personal story with a scalpel, cut that thing out, lay it on the table, and allow that energy that was absorbed there to be transformed into my current moment and focus and the direction of things like being here with you right now, with our viewers. So that was an act of magic. And that actually was far deeper than I really thought it was at first. But that in and of itself is an act of magic. So magic is conscious, directed transformation. How about that?
That sounds awesome. There's something else that came out there, which is stories. And this is something I'm quite big on at the moment, because I really know it's something new that is a concept to me. But it's like, I used to have these repeating patterns in my head and I couldn't work it out. It's like every so often it would come kick me in the arse and it would be like, why am I thinking about that thing again? It's because your brain loves to tell you stories. It's like, this is your world, this is how it exists. And it's like, how did you, so you've talked about burning that. Could you describe a bit more about that? Because that's something that I think I could learn a bit more from you on.
Hey, great. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about this, right? But let's talk a little bit more about this thing you're talking about with our story and our patterns, because we cracked open a whole can here. And
oh, it's a juicy
the reason
can.
That
Juicy.
It's the question.
Reason that the brain...
I told you he asked good questions, didn't I? Didn't I say it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's brilliant. You know, there's a thoughtfulness. Chris takes a moment to incubate his questions. He incubates them and nurtures them into fullness. So, okay. The part of us that loves to tell those stories is the negative ego. All right? And let's break that down, because people will throw the word ego into things and call it negative. Necessarily the case, because our ego is also about our self-preservation and our self-identity. But when that flips into the negative ego is when that existing self-identity becomes a damaging loop, right? And that's what we're talking about, is where nobody understands me. I lived for probably like 27 years of my life with the idea that I didn't fit in and nobody understood me because I was too weird or too out there or too different or whatever, right? Even in the punk rock scene, nobody got me because I'm weirder than everybody, right? That was my story. So that was the negative ego trying to overly define, because the negative ego is terrified of real change, terrified of it. It doesn't want to see you or your life or your circumstances change. It wants everything to stay the same. And so to do that, it's going to keep telling you the same story. It's going to say, moment by moment, our minds are redefining us. And it goes through and it tells us the whole list of these things that you're talking about, Chris. Here's who I am. Here's where I came from. Here's what happened this morning. Here's what I'm planning to do tomorrow. Here's my job. Here's my blah, blah, blah. Here's my religion. Here's my political affiliation. Whatever your story is, your negative ego will keep telling you the same thing and not allow change. That's its job, okay? So part of this process of allowing something to be destroyed in holy fire and transformed into something else is acknowledging that, is seeing the negative ego for what it is. Because the first step is awareness of, like you say, you recognize, oh, I'm seeing this pattern come up. Why is this happening? You've already done the first step. You've seen it. Because when people are unconscious of their patterning, that's where shit really gets out of hand. That's where people get into like massive cycles of addiction, of passive aggression, of codependency, of victim mentality. That's all being unconscious of the pattern. And the first thing to break any pattern, what you need to do, recognize it as a pattern. So if this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Now you can do a pattern interrupt. Okay? So the first step, consciousness and awareness. The second step is interrupt that pattern. So as you recognize the pattern for what happens. So what can you do as a radical pattern interrupt? For people, like I just mentioned, people in the cycle of addiction. Sometimes people that are heavily in the cycle of addiction, right, be it like porn, gambling, drugs, alcohol, you name it, they need to change their situation. They need to change their environment and like go to a whole new place. Like stop interacting with the circle of friends and the enabling circumstances that are keeping your pattern going. You need to break that pattern. Do something brand new. So guess what? I'm going to get up and take a solo road trip and not interact with anybody. That's a pattern interrupt. So you see the pattern coming. Oh, I know there's a 5-part pattern here, and the first 3 things have happened. I recognize the pattern with consciousness. Now I'm going to break that pattern and throw it a curveball. Do something totally different, unexpected. Break that pattern and cycle. Okay? So that's bringing that thing out of your pattern. So now you'd have to bring a new conscious awareness. So you've developed consciousness of the pattern. You've brought in action to break the pattern. So now you need to bring back in some consciousness to bring that issue to the sacrificial fire, which simply means a conscious release and a conscious letting go. And you can establish whatever form of ritual that you want around this. For example, I have channeled and downloaded a ritual about the situation that I shared called Healing the Spiritual Family Tree. And it's a very involved druidic and shamanic ritual that actually establishes connections in physical form, non-human physical form, mind you, of healthy family members. So I have a rooted and grounded sacred family that isn't necessarily the people that I was birthed through. But I felt hollow there. That story was changed. It was sacrificed and burned up. So I brought it to an altar space, let it go completely consciously. This no longer serves me. I see it and recognize it for what it is. I'm going to cut that out of my life. And then now to avoid having a hollow space, because what does a vacuum do, right? A vacuum sucks things into it. And a vacuum will actively fill the space with something. So if you only remove something, but you don't consciously give it a new thing to fill that space, it's going to suck in whatever the next thing that comes by. And guess what that's going to be? A new fucked up pattern, unless you're conscious about it. Okay? Does that help, Chris?
It does. That's a whole new way of looking at it for me. So that was very, very good. Thank you.
That's fantastic. I have 2 things I want to add. One, when you're talking about the sacred fire and burning it away, that's what you're doing if you walk on fire. If you go to a ritual, like there's weekend retreats. I have a friend who does weekend retreats out in Oregon. And that is what you do. You sit and you meditate and you focus on an issue and you do all of this emotional work on the issue. And then on the night of the fire walk, you walk with the fire. You're not walking on the fire. You're not taming the fire. You're walking with the fire and giving that old form of consciousness, giving that old form of thinking to the fire, and the fire burns that away. And the other thing about your history, it's in the word, his story.
Yep.
So that's all I got.
So many words in
let's
English
make
language are like that, though, aren't they? Dis-ease.
Yeah, disease.
Livid with anger.
Or her story.
Totally. And we don't see it. We don't pay attention to it because we're not trained to think about it, and we're not trained to pay attention to it. And that, again, comes down to consciousness and discernment.
Yeah, hey, what about this one? This is kind of like a little slightly on a different topic, but I love it because you're talking about these hidden meanings inside of our linguistics and our words, is the word intimacy. Into me see. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes again with this the whole philosophy of if we can help others, help yourself.
I just saw some smoke come out of Chris's headphones.
Yeah, that's the headphones blowing up because they know what questions he's about to ask. Yes, so yeah, the into see me is the whole thing of first, before you can have intimacy with anybody else, you have to have it with yourself. You have to learn, appreciate yourself, to know yourself, know thyself, and to know thy neighbour. Is the whole idea of, it's this looking at yourself, being open and honest with yourself before you can ever be open or honest with anybody else. But hey, what do I know? Questioner, I then ask, do you have a question?
Yeah. Yes. We've talked a lot about the physical and the spiritual, and part of what you were talking about at the beginning was things not working for you. And one of those was the food system wasn't working for you. So I was curious if that was like diet or just what was out there as food, or what was it for you that triggered that sentiment, that comment?
Ooh. Wow, yeah, see, he brings some heat. You bring some heat, brother.
See,
So
I told you, I did tell you. Sorry.
We've been warned.
as I was a pissed off punk rock teenager, right? I didn't want to buy anything that was being sold to me. If it was being sold to me or advertised to me, I thought it was bullshit. I would just see it for what it was. Anything, movies, music, like you name it, media and food. So if it's being shown to me and like advertised, like buy this, buy new things, it's going to make you feel great. Nope, I didn't want anything to do with it. So that was my first dissonance there, the first dissonance that I felt, okay? But I didn't do anything with it. I did nothing with it. I still ate those 99-cent Whoppers and got the diarrhea that came with it. I didn't do anything about it, right? I had the awareness of it, that something was wrong, but I didn't have the initiative to make a choice, okay? So about 7 years ago now, I made a different choice to stop participating in the Holocaust that is happening to the animals on this planet and take a stand for my own health and the health of the planet and the health of the animals involved and choose a vegan diet. So that's now when long cycle, I mean, that had to be almost, that was like 15 years later after I had this initial like dissonance, right? But then I kind of went to sleep and I just put it all in the back burner and didn't even think about it. But then about 7 years ago, decided that it was now time. And so I make very conscious food choices. And yeah, man, personally, I vote with my fork every single time I pick it up, every single meal that I eat. And so I vote with what I support and what I don't support very strongly. Power of the fork.
Can I just jump in before Ethan does? Because I know he's going to want to say something on this. How does that make you feel, though? Do you notice the difference before or after? What was the difference? How does that make you feel? I mean, is it like, wow, I feel amazing? Or is it like, yeah, I feel better for it?
Oh, man. So to me, it's beyond amazing. To me, this is one of the key ingredients to an ecstatic existence, to living an ecstatic existence personally, is the vibration and the quality of the food that I eat. And now I'm not saying I don't fall prey to like a bag of Lay's potato chips every once in a while. I'm not like some like super pure eater, but at least the foods that I choose to eat and what I choose to spend my dollars on, I can stand behind it and I don't feel a disconnect from it anymore. So it has made me feel better on all levels of my life. Physically, I feel healthier than I've ever been in my life. I'm not carrying any extra weight or like my circulation moving sluggishly or anything like that. Mentally, I know and understand that it's cruelty-free, the diet that I choose, and it isn't causing suffering by like my need to eat a bacon cheeseburger, right? And also that translates into spiritually. So that translates into a level of my soul and my spirit of recognizing that what Paul McCartney said is that the single greatest thing to save the planet any of us can do is choose a vegetarian diet. So it makes me feel better on all levels, man. I'm glowing and radiant because I eat plants and I love it.
Okay, now it's my turn. So, my experience with diet, I had to change my diet for health reasons because I was no longer able to continue the diet that I had and not extremely suffer from it. And my personal experience with diet is diet and exercise are two of the greatest forms of spirituality that you can go through because of everything that's entailed with it. Now, I'm a carnivore. I eat meat, but I want the animals to be very fairly treated. And so for me and my experience with this is, because I grew up with chickens and I grew up with rabbits and we loved them and we didn't kill them and they were our pets and our friends. And there was a point in my early 20s where I had a problem with being a meat eater and being so far removed from the process. So I had a friend who hunted and I wasn't in on the hunting, but I helped him clean and take care of the animals as part of my personal relationship to the food that I was eating and to my standing up and acknowledging what I was doing and wanting to do it in a more sacred way. That's not really the point, though. What really was the point for me is how, because I am one of those ridiculously hardcore people that I haven't eaten anything non-organic in like 2 or 3 years. I think it's been 2 or 3 years since the last time I ate something that was non-organic. And I had a really nasty internal fungal infection that really limited my diet to the point where I was eating no carbs except for carrots, and I was eating no fruit. I was eating nothing that came from under the ground except for carrots, and I was eating no fruit except for green apples. And I had to do that for about 6 to 9 months. And that gave me a relationship with food because for me, growing up, my mom was addicted to sugar. Like, I'm talking like a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bag of Mint Milanos, like every night. Like, so that's the mentality that I grew up with. So when you've had a shitty day, guess what? You're going to get some food to make you feel better. When you've had a good day, guess what? You're going to get some food to make you feel better. So addressing that relationship that we have with food and how we choose to use it as a reward or a punishment, I think is very important for people to look at and recognize, and to recognize that ultimately what you choose to put in your body is either loving your body or withholding love from your body. If you choose to eat 99-cent Whoppers, you are not loving yourself. There's no way, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, I will eat meat, but there's no fucking way I'm gonna even come close to touching that meat. I want somebody to kiss the cow every morning and tell it that it's beautiful and loved before I'm willing to eat it. So all this to really say is, when we address our relationship with food or anything and we become more conscious of it, it will change our relationship to it. And when we change our relationship to it, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And for me, I found as I become healthier and cleaner and my body is happier, it's significantly easier to be happy when you don't feel like shit. Like if you drink, how hard is it to feel good when you have a hangover? Now, imagine you're getting hangovers from food and you just don't realize it, because most of us are. If you eat a lot of processed grains, if you eat a lot, I mean, there's a myriad of things, lots of chemicals in your food and all that sort of stuff. You will get food hangovers. So imagine how hard it is to try and hold a pure, happier vibration when you feel like shit all the time. I mean, when I'm sick, I'm a grumpy bastard. Most of the time I'm a nice, happy, giggly, outgoing person. But if I get sick, I'm like, ugh, leave me the fuck alone, you bastards. And so with that in mind, if you look at your body and the things that we do to our body and the relationship that we have to food, the higher we can clean ourselves up, whether that's vegan, vegetarian, or just addressing the food sources of the animals, vibration carries through. So if that animal was an unhappy animal, you're eating unhappiness. That's why do you think the McDonald's or the Whopper, the 99-cent Whopper is so terrible? Because that was a miserable animal that had a miserable experience. You're eating misery. You're absorbing misery and turning that misery into yourself, into your human experience. Yes.
All right. Without going down this entire...
Sure.
In my opinion, no matter how much the cow is kissed and loved and everything like that, at the moment of death, no animal wants to die. And so at the moment of death, there's a massive surge and release of fear that enters that on a hormonal level, no matter how the animal is treated.
Yeah,
so
totally.
On that level, they could have had the best life ever and been massaged every day and told they were a brilliant creation of God. But then when they get hung by the foot and like get a bolt driven through their skull or however they die, you know, it's a massive release of fear hormones that go into the tissue. So
absolutely, there is that. And for me, growing up, and I don't think I told you this, I was homeschooled. I've never been to school. I grew up with a mom who was very, very open and very much into spirituality and stuff like that. So when I was growing up, I had tree friends that I grew up climbing. We had trees that we hugged every day. So for me, and this is my experience, and this is not meant in any way against anyone else. For me, I see plants and animals as the same. I see them as having the same life force. I see them as having the same experiences. I grew up, my mom had a lot of houseplants. And so for me, respect for our animals, what I was raised with, and what I still believe is, I respect plant life just as much as I respect animal life. So for me, and this is just my experience, a lot of, and I don't say this to try and invalidate what anyone else is experiencing, because this is my experience. And I'm sure that everyone else is not having the same experience, because none of us are quite having the same experience. For me, an animal life and a plant life hold just as much validity. I'm just as reluctant to take a plant life as I am to take an animal life. And I recognize that for me, ultimately, as part of my experience with the hunting and the gutting of animals and all of that, was I realized that for me, I had some dogmas about my relationship to plants and my ability to understand their pain and my ability to understand the animal's pain. So, and I would like to say that I'm not at all condoning people who kill in a violent manner. Like hanging an animal up by its foot and then putting a bolt through its head is not an animal that I want to eat, that I condone the behavior that led up to it, or anything along those lines. And for me, the sacred violence we did, our last show was on sacred violence. Sacred violence is universal. So from where I'm sitting, the violence is going to happen no matter what. So whether that violence is against a plant or whether that violence is against an animal, to me, it's fundamentally the same form of violence. It's just manifesting in a slightly different form. And for me, it is harder. I have killed animals in the past, and it is much harder to kill an animal because they're more similar to me and they remind me more of myself, and I can look in their eyes and I can see the pain and the fear. And I feel that if I was a high enough vibration, that I would also feel that experience when I'm killing a plant. When I'm doing the same thing. So to me, on a greater perspective, it is the same. And again, I would like to iterate, I do not condone the animal, the system of farming that is used for animals. I don't condone the lack of compassion that you find there. I don't condone the antibiotics or the pesticides, or you know, because to me, when you look at like a high density feedlot, you're looking at the equivalent of a GMO farm that's sprayed with Roundup. You know, you look at the animals that like high density feedlots. Let's get real gritty and nasty here for a second. High density feedlots with cows. Okay, so they put cows on a high density feedlot. They feed them corn. They feed them corn that is so high in mycotoxins, which is a form of fungus poison, that it is considered unacceptable to be eaten by humans because it is too poisonous for humans. So cows go on this high density feedlot. They are fed nothing but corn, which is not their natural diet. They are slaughtered after 90 days because after 90 days, the ulcers in their stomach have become so big that the cow will die. So with that in mind, I see it exactly the same as the mineral deprived soil that plants live in, that they're then sprayed with Roundup, pesticides, fungicides, and all that sort of stuff. And in fact, most of those crops are so mineral deficient that they actually have to spray minerals on them to make them more, to try and bring up their nutritional value. So to me, it's all the same. I view plants and animals as, I think we're all alive and we're all having an experience, and ultimately, anything that's put on this earth is here to have a lesson learned. And I've been studying dogs a lot lately because I moved in with somebody who has a dog, and how dogs are experiencing their own form of karma, and dogs are experiencing their own things. Because, for instance, my roommate's dog is a very fearful dog. And those who are familiar with the principles of Chinese medicine, as I know Boggie is, she has problems with her kidneys because that is the element, that is the organ that, when out of balance, generates the extra sensation of fear. Grief is lungs, liver is anger, and so on and so forth. So to me, this brings up, and also something that I observed is that, so to be able to be jealous, we have to tell ourselves a story. We have to tell ourselves a story about how something is right and something is wrong and how it shouldn't be this way. That's why polyamory on a whole generally fails, is because we're bred with this societal concept of love and possession and caring and really possessing the one that you love and not being open to that sort of thing. And so to me, the only way you can be jealous is if you're telling yourself a story. Now, dogs can become jealous. I've seen dogs be jealous. So that brings up the inevitable question in my mind of, so what story is the dog telling itself? And if the dog is telling itself a story, then isn't the dog experiencing its own reality and its own karmic system and its own experience that its soul is here to learn and its soul is here to grow and change through? So that brings up a whole nother set of interesting, like, I don't know. And again, I would like to iterate, I do not condone cruelty to animals. They need to be loved because all beings need to be loved. And I am more of the mindset of the natives, where it is a gift from spirit and it is a sacred gift and it needs to be honored, where the bear or the deer needs to be honored just as much as the carrot or the celery. And I realize that my view is somewhat extreme and not shared by most people.
I will say that in the ancient knowledge on a lot of the ancient cultures, I know that they spent as much time blessing the food, the fruit, the veg, as they did bless if they hunted an animal, and then they would do a blessing, thanking it for giving its life for them to eat, and they would do exactly the same for the food as well, because there is case studies that show that when you pull a leaf off a plant, it is emitting a frequency that couldn't be considered a scream, and also that plants are affected by sound, that music, different types of music affect different plants. So there is in Buddhism as well, that plants are considered as conscious as everything else. There's a consciousness within trees, within plant, within everything is one, therefore everything is sacred. Which does lead to a question, if everything's sacred, what the freaking hell are you meant to eat? But at the same time, there are ways, whatever it is you believe, you have to believe within your whole heart, and you have to believe for yourself that you're right. So it's about doing what's right for you. So I feel, is that if you're going to eat meat, you have to have ways of countering the negativity that will, like you say, when you dye something, it does go under stress. Now, they do say the same with vegetables as well, that when you pull vegetables out, they do, there is a frequency being emitted there. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's what works for you. Obviously, veganism is definitely working for you, Daniel, because you look awesome. You look very well. You look super cool.
The traditional baggy eyes that I encounter with a lot of vegans. A lot of vegans look like they're not having that great of a time, and you look like you're having a great time. So good for you.
I think that's
totally.
Well, for me, I think that is because you have a balanced system, because your system is working, and that's where I think people who are vegans, they need a whole round system, and if they've not, if they feel lack of energy or they look forlorn, I think they should be going and see you at least, because you're doing it right. You're doing it the right way.
I agree.
Anyway, so Chris, questioner, do you have another question?
Questions, not enough time. Right, I don't think we should do another one on food, because that just could go on forever. So which one now? Right. Okay. So giving thanks. I mean, do you sort of give thanks to anything in your daily rituals, or is that part of your daily ritual? How important is like being thankful to you?
That is beyond a daily ritual. That is a second by second practice. I am perpetually non-stop thankful for everything in my life. Even the hard stuff. And that's where it gets really tricky, is if you can bring gratitude into your lessons, you can bring gratitude into the thing that kicks you in the ass, and that's like really good. Because I mean, face it, okay, all of us, we were lucky enough to land in a physical body that is generally healthy. Like, whatever, we may have a little thing here or there, but like, we got 10 fingers, 10 toes, our lungs are working, our heart's beating, we can communicate with words, we can make sounds out of the holes in our face that the other person can understand. That's pretty crazy. We're on a rock flying through outer space that happens to be at the perfect distance from the sun, that we have liquid water, man. This is amazing. This is really cool, okay? So, yeah, gratitude is like a second by second practice for me. But I do have some kind of extended, prayers or morning rituals. A great morning ritual that's so simple that I would encourage everyone out there to do. I have a video about this practice, is the attitude of gratitude meditation, where in the morning, first thing when I wake up, I'll sit up in bed and sometimes I'll put my right hand to my heart, my left hand to my belly, and the right hand is sending love back into the heart, and the left hand is receiving anything that's coming down from the lower region, right? And I'll just think of every single thing in my life I'm grateful for in rapid order. Sometimes I'll say it out loud, sometimes I'll just do it in my mind. I'm thankful for all the healthy food that I get to eat. I'm thankful for living in a place that isn't, war-torn. I'm thankful for, list goes on and on and on. I'm thankful for my children. I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my future children. Everything in the world that I can think of. I'm thankful that I live a life that I only do the jobs that I want to do, that I specifically only do what I love and feel called to do. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the beauty of technology and the miracle that we're communicating from 4 different places on the globe right now and having a conversation together. I'm thankful for that, okay? So I'll go through my whole list and then take a moment to send blessings out to everything that I can think of in the world, especially the hard shit. So, blessings and peace to, again, the whole list, everyone that's near and dear to me, blessings and peace to the police system, to the military system, to the international monetary systems, to the education system, blessing and peace to the criminals, blessing and peace to the soldiers, to the generals, and to those killed by the soldiers. All the way along, because the whole world needs it. So that's a more specific gratitude practice that I do have, is to cultivate as much gratitude as I can and then send it out to every corner of the globe.
That was awesome.
So, thank you. You know what I'd love to talk about a little bit, guys, if you guys are interested, is get into mudras before we wrap up, because this is really it's one of my big passions and my big loves, and I found a really tangible result from it. So I'd love to talk about that.
Firstly, for those who don't know, what is a mudra?
Okay. So a mudra, and I'm not even saying it right, and somebody I had on one of my YouTube videos, somebody called me out and was like, "Oh, it's really pronounced mudra." And I'm like, "But I'm not Indian. I'm a white Caucasian guy." Yeah. Anglicizing any word I say, and so I'm going to say it mudra because that's what works for me. I'm not going to try to put on an Indian accent just for this one word. So I'm not ignorant.
It's your word. You have feelings for it. It's your word. Yeah. Some people say Taoism. It's Taoism. But if you want to say Taoism, fine. It's cool. You can call it banana for all I care. Is because the truth is what it means to you. That's what's important. It's all about the feeling. So you were saying mudra. What is mudra to you?
Great. So a mudra is a specific hand position. So the old peace sign, guess what? That's a mudra. This This is probably one of the most famous around the entire world. In yogic culture, this is called Anjali Mudra, or prayer hands. And so what this does, what using a mudra of any form does, is awesome, right? Oh, yeah, Sifu Boggie is doing another great one. This or this. This is another mudra right here, martial arts. Picture this, guys, okay? Right now, as all of us are talking, we have massive unseen frequencies going through our bodies. We have every single AM and FM radio channel passing through our bodies. We have CB and police frequency bandwidth. We have Wi-Fi streaming through our bodies right now, okay? So, cell towers, all of these things are going through us. If you were to pick up on all of those signals at once, it would be cacophony. It would be too much to understand, and you would get an aneurysm. Your head would explode. So, in all of these things, we need an antenna. We need a specific antenna. Use just the radio for an example. You need an antenna that can fix in on the frequency of 97.7 FM or 103.4, and then you can get that channel clearly. So when we adopt a specific mudra with the hands, we are creating a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual antenna to receive and hold that frequency. It's a frequency fix. And so when you understand what channel you're calling in, when you understand what they're broadcasting on 99.9 and then tune your dial to it actively and consciously, that's what we do with a mudra. When I understand the principles of Anjali Mudra and I use this gesture, it's way more than just putting my palms together. I'm now holding a specific energetic frequency, a specific antenna and anchor for my practice. That's what a mudra is.
Yeah, very much so. And also, if I may just slightly tweak, add, is also where you put that mudra, where you position it, changes the frequency as well, enhances the frequency. So you know, you're placing it on the heart level, or the heart chakra. Also, behind the heart chakra, in the ancient knowledge, behind the heart chakra is the middle dantian, the jing. The one side is compassion, one side is passion. So placing it there, you're activating it in a certain way. Placing it on top of the head, you activate it in a certain way. Which is why in certain practices with certain monks, you will see them go from head, heart to belly, because they're activating their three ones. They're also activating their third eye, their heart chakra, and their solar plexus. So these are all symbologies, and these, you know, a mudra for me is a Pictionary version of a mantra. Mantra is sound, vibration, a frequency, and a mudra is exactly the same. It is a frequency in a physical form, a picture form. You're creating that picture with your body or your hands. So in actual fact, what people don't necessarily get is yogas, qigongs are mudras. They are a mudra with the body. You are creating that physical frequency, or tuning your body into a frequency with your body is the mudra. You're creating a freaking mudra with your body, man. It's freaking awesome. And then if you move them as well, so with you, the yoga you do is that obviously they're moving, you're tuning in, you're enhancing that frequency, and you're going from one frequency to another. So you almost, I used to be a DJ, so you're got two tracks and you're mixing the tracks together to make a totally different song. So you're enhancing the tune. So you're even when you're doing Neigong or Qigong or yoga that's moving from one form to the next, you're enhancing it even more because you're moving one track into another, creating a whole new frequency, a whole new vibration. But hey, what do I know? So, questioner.
Oh, okay. So you were talking about the tangible results earlier, and you got a little bit cut off. Was the answer you wanted to give there, or?
Well, yeah. I think Boggie kind of covered a little bit of this too. When I first found yoga, I gave my story of finding yoga practice, and when I first found it, all of a sudden, things became more tangible for me, because what happened was, being a very busy mind and busy body, I had a challenging time meditating. I loved the concept of it. I loved all esoteric thought and getting into all kind of philosophic topics and metaphysical topics, but sitting in stillness and meditating was a real challenge for me. So through yoga, it became a way to hold the body in a specific position and use my physicality, use my body to anchor in a clear point of meditation. Whereas I think sometimes there can be an idea of meditating being foregoing the physical body and like, just sit there and do this and meditate. Okay, well, that's great, but can you use the physical body as a tool and a gateway? And the answer is yes. So through mudras, I found even more refinement in that. I found much more refinement in the specific frequency and energetics that I'm calling about. And it gives me something solid. It gives me something like literally in the palm of my hand that means something to me. So yeah, man, it's that's been my real result, is like a repeatable structure as well. So I have a background of, I spent probably 16 years as a remodel carpenter, right? I can take apart a house down to its foundation and rebuild the whole thing all by myself. I understand the houses as a system. And so through that, I have innate understanding of tools. I use tools very well. So now mudras became a tool for me. They became an actual tool to use. And now I have a whole toolbox. I have a whole toolbox full of meditation techniques, including quite a variety of specific mudras. So just like when you're doing construction, you don't go, if you're trying to cut a board in half, you don't go grab a pipe wrench. That shit will not work for you. You could bang it over and over and over again. Eventually you might break it, but it's going to be crude. It's going to be rough. It's going to hurt you. Like, it's not right. Also, you don't grab a chainsaw to like do trim carpentry. There are time and places for each tool. There's an application for each tool. So now that I have an extended toolbox and a knowledge of how to use each meditative tool, each mudra, when I want to call upon a specific vibration or energy, I have a tool to use. Okay? So I'd love to like show you guys one. You guys want to like learn about a specific mudra? Do you have like maybe a topic you want to find out about, or you have a specific question or area and what mudra I might apply to that?
Question up.
Digestion.
Ooh, digestion. Okay.
Emotional or physical?
So digestion. I'm going to show you this one. So this is a Mahatrika mudra, which also means triangle, okay? But it looks like, when you turn it down like this, it looks like the bowl of the pelvis, kind of, sort of. There's a lot of representation. So if you were to do an X-ray down through your body, your pelvic bowl would look very similar to this, okay? So to make this shape, I have brought the ring finger and the thumb together on each hand. Ring finger and thumb. And then I've put those tips of those together and then touched the pinky together like that. Okay, so ring finger and thumb, and then those touch, and then the pinky finger touches like this. Then the middle and index finger are expanding out and stretching out in two different directions. Okay? Yeah. So that would be held right here. That would be held at the hara, just in between the navel and the pubic bone. Okay, so because this symbolizes the pelvis, that mudra is good for all kinds of sexual problems and all kinds of digestive problems, because that's where our intestines sit, is in the bowl. The bowels are in the bowl, right? So by creating this symbol and holding it at the belly, and then basically you also incorporate a visualization very often. So your hands hold that frequency, because their hands are great senders and givers of energy, like you know from Qigong, right? So when we hold that, then you could bring about, if you were doing this for digestion as opposed to like sexual issues, you could bring about an image of smooth flowing pipes, like literally picture plumbing and picture things picture water flowing through a pipe. And just hold that visualization in the mind with that mudra at the belly, and you'll start feeling your belly gurgle. It'll start waking up, because you're bringing in the frequency of healthy pelvis, a healthy pelvic bowl, and flowing water. That's what I would apply to digestive issues.
And also, well, the whole thing, the pelvis, the qua, as it is in Chinese, that the pelvis is said to be the figure eight, and you're creating the figure of eight, which, when you put the figure of eight on its side, it's immortal. It's the sign of immortality, and you're creating the dynamo effect of clearing, flowing, as you're saying, flowing the energy within the immortal. So there's just a little bit of ancient knowledge from the Chinese side. There as
I want to
well.
hear something
So that's very cool. Mudra.
about energy and concepts and imagining things and visualizing things. So like a lock taught me this. I learned this from a lock and a key. And the concept is that a lock and a key is is a physical representation of an energetic principle, because everything is vibrating. So a lock is vibrating on a certain frequency that we all associate with protection and safety. So ultimately, if you're going to draw on a frequency or an energy and try and envision that, as the example given with the pipes works so efficiently, is because it's such a recognized manifestation of that thing that it very clearly calls in that energy, because it's such an archetypical force and it's such a fantastically widespread recognized representation of that force. Because I've talked about this before, I don't believe that anything is that humans can really come up with anything. You know, cars are kind of like a bad attempt at humans. You know, we're this incredibly awesomely complicated machine that works horrifically well. So we try and duplicate that, because that's what we do. I believe that the internet is our attempt at the Akashic record, because all the information's already there. If we could access it, if our consciousness was at that point, we could access this and draw it in. But since it's not, we got to try and figure out how to mend our schism with God, or spirit, or the creator, or the knowledge. And I believe you see that in Facebook as well, because it's my understanding that you can't reach full psychic ability unless you are willing to let every one of your thoughts be shared with the world, and to be completely open to the world seeing you for who you are and how you think. And I believe you see that subconsciously manifest on Facebook, where people, or any other form of social media, where people share the most intimate and dark secrets. And it's because the vibration on the planet is picking up, and this is all my opinion and my theory. So you see these things beginning to manifest in the subconscious of the masses. So that's why you see so many people who have internet addiction, have information addiction, who post their entire lives on Facebook, who do all of these things, because ultimately they feel the call and they don't know how to respond to it, because they're not in touch with themselves. And I feel like if people were in touch with themselves, you would feel a call to be drawn to something and you would go to it. It's like, ideally, your body will tell you everything that you need to be eating. If you're in close enough contact with your body will say, hey, I don't want to eat acidic food right now. I have a need for a more alkaline food right now, or vice versa. I have a friend who is fairly into that sort of thing, and he'll go long periods of time without eating meat. But then something will come up in his physical life, where he'll have a really strong craving for meat, and he'll go with that craving because he's trying to follow the natural cycle of his body. So I really believe that when all this, bringing it back, I really believe that when you're thinking about something like a lock or pipes, and you're connecting with the greater archetypical representation of that vibration, and that's why it's so easy to imagine it, because that's how we can imagine it, because that's the closest version to it that we can make. Does that make sense? Like, sure. The closest version that we can make to our bowels and the efficiency with which they process food and the flow, and that would be piping. Or the closest that we can do to building an energetic shield around ourselves is a physical shield, or a lock, or a chain with a lock. And they will change depending on the societal connotation, but ultimately it's still the same archetypical energy that we're just viewing in a slightly different way.
There you go. That's exactly the reason why a flowing pipe worked right there.
Totally. Yeah. I just wanted to iterate it, because I found, for me, the more knowledge that I have on the greater universe and how it works, the easier it is to see the rest of how the universe works. Because God is really smart. He's got a wicked good plan, he or she, it, spirit, whatever you want to call it, has a really wicked good plan with some really wicked good designs. And that's why I believe that you see things like sacred geometry present, because math is the creator. The creator has to have a mathematical formula for creating, because math is a concept. We just have to discover what it is. So if we can apply that concept of looking at energetic representations and things like that to the wider scheme of things, I feel, at least for me, it's made it a lot easier for me to see the greater connections and simplicity, the simplicity that is present within the extremely complex nature of the universe.
Indeed. It's all cool. So, have we... Yeah, I am... Yeah. So, questioner. Is there another question?
Oh, yes, there is. The trouble is, we're running out of time, and like I said, there's so many questions and not enough time. Earlier, you were talking about shielding, and I was just wondering if you could explain why you were shielding and what you might be shielding against.
Yes, you're good, man. Keep this guy around. Keep this one around.
I know.
That's a brilliant question. So, a lot of times when I work with private clients, and I'd love to share what that'll look like, as we wrap up, how people can find me there. But this is one of the very first things we get down to. As in the current age, I believe that people are getting more psychic abilities turned on, and people are getting more and more flooded by their abilities because nobody's telling them what they are. Okay, so every single kid out there that is on the autism spectrum or is labeled with ADHD is really attention directed at higher dimensions. That's all that means. Okay, attention directed at higher dimensions. They're seeing things that other people aren't tuning into, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's telling them what it is they're picking up on. So a big thing that we have right now on this planet is people that are awake and online and are really turned on to their purpose, or not even, they're just starting to wake up. We have empathy. We're empathic on a larger level than we've ever been. So this means that people are feeling other people's feelings, sometimes to a degree where people will get out of bed in the morning and they're not just feeling other people's, they're feeling the sorrow of the world. And I've been at places like this in my youth, of feeling the sorrow of the world on such a massive scale that it's almost crippling. It's almost incapacitating. If you really focus on specifically that, the sorrow of the world, man, that shit's deep, okay? So how do you acknowledge that? How do you acknowledge and understand that without it crippling you? You need to shield. You need to shield. So that was a big scale. A small scale is you're standing in line at the grocery store, you're on the bus, and there's some weirdo over there, and they're starting to affect your aura. They're starting to get to you, and you're feeling their shit. You're feeling worked up because this other person has a manic energy level, right? You need to shield because people are too open and they don't even know what's going on. But yet, and then people are going and sitting in an office space with 40 other people that are all messed up and all out of whack. And then they come home and they're schizophrenic and they just plop in front of the couch and watch Netflix all day. You wonder why? It's because they don't have no idea how to manage this energy. There's two ways to do it. Number one, you build walls. You build a protective wall around you. And basically that means moving from empathy to apathy and turning everything off so you don't feel anything anymore. That's option one. But when you do that, when you build walls around yourself, you become your own prisoner. You've built a wonderful tower. It's a wonderfully protective tower, but you are now trapped. You've made the prison of yourself because you don't feel anything anymore, right? Instead of that, a shield, instead of a brick wall, is more like a one-way security mirror, or a two-way security mirror, where you can see out and through, but they cannot see in. And nothing can penetrate your shield unless you allow it and invite it into your world. So at this point, you can move through the world. You can sit on the bus next to the same weirdo, and now you can witness them. You can see them from your place without it shifting your energy, without it moving and affecting you. Okay? That's why you need a shield. And every single person that is sensitive to energetics out there on the planet, if you are sensitive to the energetics of people, situations, environments, Like if you go into a physical location and feel, oh, this is weird, this is creepy, I don't like what's going on here, and nothing looks out of place, but you feel something weird, you need to shield. Okay? If I have examples where my wife is energetically, she's super powerful energetically. She's a real powerhouse. And if I do not shield, I can find myself, like, she'll have something will maybe work her up, or she'll maybe get upset about something, and then the next thing you know, I'm a mess for a whole day, and I don't even realize why. And it was like, oh, it's because I let another person's moment or frustration or anything change my frequency and move me. So if I'm shielded, I can witness that, and I can hold space, and I can say, I'm here for you, I witness you, I see you, I can be with you through any processes, but it doesn't have to affect me. Okay, that's a difference. So that's what we're shielding from. There's an additional level of actually creating a shield from negative energy. Okay, and there's a thing that happens in the world, and maybe as some of our viewers, or maybe you guys individually, have begin to get a little more online and a little more tuned in and tapped on, you know, that there's a moth to the flame. As your personal light starts glowing brighter and you're going through this world as a beacon and like shining the light, the weirdos will come to you. They will come into your life because it's like a moth to the flame. They're like, oh, what's that? And they'll come right to you. So if you're shielded, that's a little more protected, and it's a little safer because they're not going to be like you're not going to be instantly attracting every single weirdo out there because your light's so bright. You can shine fully and then decide where you let it show and decide who you let in, okay? So the whys, that's the whys and the whats. The hows is I have a very specific energetic shielding practice that I hand down, and this is when we talked about ritual earlier, there are some rituals that we can just make up ourselves. Sometimes a ritual will just come to you and you'll download it, and sometimes a ritual has, like you mentioned, Ethan, a key. There's a specific key to a ritual that needs to be handed to you. And so if you have rituals are either passed down very specifically and you are given a key in order to use and activate that ritual, or it's you know, you can have them just free. But the one that I use is handed down. It's handed down to me, and I was given a key to it, and so now I hand it down to others and give them the key to it. And yeah, but there's many different ways. The personal one that I use is an incantation that I'll say. It's a specific thing that I'll say, a specific focus that I have, and it incorporates kind of some little movements and energetics. It's not very long. It takes maybe 15 seconds. After this is done, my shield is in place all day long, everywhere I go. And, you know, at times, if it needs to be re-amplified or reconnected with, like say, you know, I ride a motorcycle. I ride a badass Russian motorcycle with a sidecar. As I'm going out there through the world and like I'm approaching an intersection on my bike, I'll say the word shield. Boom, it re-strengthens. Shield. Back up, okay? And it's literally like, it's like a science fiction force field. It's an energy bubble completely around me, shielding me from and redirecting all kinds of negative flow whatsoever. All right? How's that?
It's a very good answer. I have one quick question before anyone else jumps in, though. So that's your conscious, your waking mind. Now, your subconscious mind is, I think, active when you're sleeping. Does your shield cover you for that period as well? Because you said it's once you've activated it for the day.
Yes, I am absolutely shielded while I sleep, and it's a good thing to do. And there's additional practices that I lay on top of that. Other lineage rituals that have been handed down can be layered on top of that.
Cool. Floor's open.
I just wanted to say something really quick. The reason, going back to the whole, we're duplicating everything, that's why science fiction has things like energy fields in it, is because, in my opinion, we are subconsciously aware of that, but the only way that it can manifest in a form that people will accept it is as a fantasy. And that's why you see science and magic becoming closer and closer together, is because ultimately the science fiction stuff is talking of the unseen, that people haven't been able to acknowledge as anything more than a fantasy. And it's coming out more and more that these things are true and hold weight, because we are subconsciously imitating what we already know is there that our consciousness cannot grab onto. And
very true.
force fields and energy is a fantastic example.
And I'll add a Taoist version. There are many versions, but one of the Taoist versions of a form of shield is Bruce Lee made it a famous saying, is if you want to be like anything, be water, my friend. Because if you create your energy, you feel yourself metaphysically become water. Is that when an object, when a rock is in the middle of the stream, the water will just go around it, and through time the rock will be worn away by the water. But you throw a rock into the water, you can't damage the rock. You put fire onto water, it will turn into steam, but you can't damage the water. You know, it will go round. You know, that water, when water pours into a cup, it becomes a cup. When water pours into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. It can go through the smallest of gaps, and enough of it will break a dam. If you want to be anything, be water, my friend. So there are two main philosophies or styles of Taoism. You have fire Taoism, which is very similar to the Kundalini yoga, so very much about the fire serpent. It's very much, there's the fire way, and then you have the water way, and the water way is this philosophy of this mess. When things are coming towards you, you can evaporate, you can adapt, you can turn, you can twist. You don't have to face them straight on. So physically wise, when somebody hits you, most people will brace and take that impact, and when you're bracing, you tense all your muscles, so the impact will actually hurt more. So one of the biggest, it's a tough thing for a lot of people to learn, but one of the biggest things, say like in an accident, I've had car crashes where other people are bracing for the crash, I actually totally relax. And by relaxing, or when something, if you've ever watched The Drunken Master, which was Jackie Chan, and he drops a weight. Well, you're a martial artist, you're old, you know that. So, you know, and he drops the weight, and when the weight hits his belly, he breathes out, because when you're expelling the air, when you're going with the flow, rather than tensing, when you tense, you actually taut your muscles. And then when you have an impact, those muscles, because they're all hard and locked, there's more chance and likelihood that you'll rip muscles and or tendons, and or because the muscles are locked around the bone, you could actually break the bones. By trying to soften up as much as possible, you relax and loosen. So becoming almost like a rag doll is the idea. Metaphysically is you feel that energy coming, adapt to it, and then on the higher levels there's this thing of turning char, negative energy, emotion, burps, you turn char into chi, so you convert. So like you convert water into steam, and it runs a steam engine. Also, scientifically, you turn water, break down to the hydrogen, and you can fuel a car. So negative energy can be transmuted, converted. It's a skill. And there are things, and like I say, the shields work brilliantly, but also, you know, there is the shield being you yourself, you converting your energy, so you become transparent. So that thing, whatever it is, that negativity can't affect you because it goes through you, passes through you. But they're all very, very cool, all techniques, all skills. And it does, Taoistically, it doesn't matter what you use, as long as you're using something and it works for you. So if it works for you, it's all good. But hey, what do I know? So anybody got a question or a statement? Do we want to wrap it up? It is 10:05. It's up to you. It's your show.
Let's take one more. I got time for one more question, and then I'd love to let people know how they can find more of me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, well, that goes without saying. So, questioner, do your worst.
Do my best. Okay. Yoga. Now, I I have been doing yoga for a little while now, and I absolutely love it. I mean, it's just fantastic. You can just, I won't go into my personal experiences with yoga, but I'm really curious about aerobic yoga because, I mean, there's always this great misconception sometimes you have to be super fit or super flexible, and it's like, no, that's what you're trying to build into. And particularly with aerobic yoga, is that an issue for people to get their head around the fact that you don't have to be this super strong athlete to pick people up or get into the positions?
That is an issue for many people. So it's acrobatic yoga. We basically are using like Chinese acrobatics or something that you may see in like Cirque du Soleil, and using yogic principles and body awareness, okay? But yeah, there are people, I'll find that there are people that are wonderful yogis or yoginis, you know, they've had like a 10-year practice, and then they're like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. Do you really think I could? It's like, are you kidding me? If you walked your ass into this yoga studio and did an hour-long class and then walked back out without any problems, yeah, you can do AcroYoga. So that is a really important thing to understand. We use, when it's done correctly, I'm using the structure of my body. When I'm holding somebody up over me with my feet, I'm using my bones and my skeletal structure and not my muscles, like trying to hold somebody up, okay? Most of us, most healthy people, can leg press twice their body weight. Easily. You can leg press twice your body weight. Our legs hold us up all day long. We move through this world on our legs. They guide us through our whole life, right? So I'll use in the very basic form. Let me tell you a little secret, okay? And although we're not doing acro at the moment, it's easier if you're actually experiencing this. There's a base. This is the person that lays on the ground and holds the other person up. They're the foundation. And there's a flyer. This is whoever's picking their feet up off the ground and flying, okay? And in L basing, which is where the base is laying on their back and their legs are up in the air, they're a nice L shape. That's the most common form. And so the base is laying there, the back's on the ground, the legs are up in the air, and the other person, maybe they have the feet on their pelvis, and they're doing like a Superman or a Superwoman. This is called bird pose. When you're doing that, there's two ways you could be supporting here. You need to think of this dichotomy and this split between hard heavy and soft heavy. And this is a mental concept that I'll teach my first time bases. So hard heavy is a 10-pound bowling ball on a granite countertop. It rolls all over the place, right? Soft heavy is a 10-pound sack of flour, right? They weigh the same, but there's two different aspects of that weight. So as a base, you would want your hips to be soft heavy, a sack of flour, accepting the weight and becoming a foundation for it. If you're flexing all your muscles, you become the bowling ball and your ass is rolling around on the ground and it's hard for anyone to be stable. So instead you accept the weight and broaden out instead of fight the weight. And then you align. There's something called the stack. Just like, sure, the easiest way to do something is to build something plumb, to build something straight up and down, right? Because it's stacking its own structure on top of itself. If you purposely build something at an angle, massive engineering has to go into it. It's so much work to build something at an angle. So straight up and down is the easier format. That's why when you find your stack, that means I help people align and bring their ankles in a direct stack above their hips. It's easier. Your ankles aren't towards your face. You're not building things at an angle. They're not back behind you. You're not trying to sustain things at an angle. You're finding your vertical stack and you're accepting that weight. And through some mental concept and a little bit of physical practice, people get it real quick. And one of my very favorite things in life is to see somebody in a 1-hour acro class. They've never done it before. And they come in and by the end of it, they say, I didn't know I could do that. Oh my God, I didn't know I could do that. That's one of my favorite things in life is to see somebody come away with that experience.
Is sacred geometry part of that yoga as well? Because just the shapes that you form just look so perfect. I don't know, it just...
Well, okay, so yes, because sacred geometry is in everything. In every single thing, there is sacred geometry. So you want to make it easier, good geometry is better for you, right? It's easier with good geometry. And realistically, now here's a whole nother aspect of the acro yoga for me, because I also teach, I teach like a very playful hatha yoga, right? But then I teach acro, and they're very different practices. In in yoga, we call it our practice. When we're doing traditional yoga, or my yoga is not very traditional, but when we're doing yoga, we call it our practice, right? We're on our mats, we're in ourselves, we're like cultivating our own, endurance and our balance and all these things and our breath. When we're in AcroYoga, I don't use the word practice, it's play. We come here to play because we're opening up and we're embracing that inner child, that childlike enthusiasm and fun. And so abundant laughter, all kinds of fun play. I incorporate different group games and different group dynamics. It's basically like Big Kids Recess, okay? Then it adds on this whole beautiful layer. You have all the things that an individual yoga practice gives you. Now when you have AcroYoga or partner dynamics, you're adding on layers of community. You're adding on communication in verbal and nonverbal forms. You're adding on nonverbal communication, energetic understanding, and you get into something of safe and healthy touch, safe and healthy physical contact, where the world we live in, especially as masculine embodied beings, when we're males in this society, typically we only touch another person if it's to fight or to fuck. That's it, right? So now you have a format where you can be intimate, you can have intimacy, intimacy with another person without it being sexual. Non-sexual intimacy, where you're in physical contact with somebody, you're looking into their eyes, and you're working together to do things and to move your bodies in a sensual way that is not sexual.
Oh, I have another question. Sorry. So this is something that I've been thinking about when I've been looking at those pictures, is that normally in yoga, I tend to feel quite relaxed after doing it, but there's something about the energy of the picture that looks different. Could you describe that maybe?
Yeah, that works on different levels, okay? So there are different forms of acrobatic yoga. There are some very dynamic poses, very, very dynamic, high-flying, showstopper, ooh and ah, crowd pleaser acro, okay? There's also therapeutic acro yoga, which is very similar to Thai massage. It's kind of like intertwined with Thai massage. So that is a restorative version where the person will actually get quite nourished, and the flyer will really be basically getting like an energy and a massage treatment, like a therapeutic inversion. And so there are both ends of that. But I think maybe one of the things that you are witnessing is the very first thing that attracted me to that couple doing acro yoga on a hill at a festival. And I couldn't put words to it at the time. I didn't know what I was seeing, but it was connection in a deeper level. It was this interpersonal connection where almost like a beautiful tango dance where you see two people like just really dancing the tango and they're like almost reading each other's minds and they're just moving in fluid motion as one. That's what I was witnessing. And because it has a yogic principle, it was a little bit different even than the dance, It was this sensuality and this non-spoken connection. Like these two people are so connected that they're sharing energy fields. Auras extend depending on our level of activation at any given moment from like 6 feet to about 40 feet, depending on what we're up to. Our heart field is that big. So when you are physically in contact with somebody, and then you have a singular purpose, okay? When I'm in a yoga pose, when I'm doing a personal, individual yoga pose, it's cool. I'm doing eagle pose, and I'm going to sit there and try to focus, I'm trying to not focus on this or that. Maybe I'm trying to like move beyond my chattering mind. Maybe I'm focusing on my balance, my breath, this or that. I'm getting into my hamstring, whatever. There's a lot of different things that can be going on. I could be looking at somebody's butt in yoga pants, right? So when I'm doing acro yoga, this is very specific. It is singular moment. My job is to hold this person up with my feet and not drop them on their skull, okay? I can't look around at anything. I can't worry about my taxes. I can't worry about my kids. I can't worry about my anything. I am holding this person up in a singular, individual present moment with no distractions. That's my sole purpose. So that might be what you're witnessing as well, is instead of just an individual holding Warrior 2 and looking very majestic on Instagram, now you have real human dynamic connection on a soul energetic level.
It is very cool. It does look very cool. And I would definitely like to find somebody here in the UK and learn it here. So it'd be awesome. Thank you very much.
You know what, Boggie? My lovely wife Rachel and I, with my 2 children, will be traveling through the UK next summer.
Oh wow! Yeah,
we're gonna be. Maybe we'll meet up.
Oh, definitely. Oh, without doubt. I was actually thinking of having you again on the show sometime next year. But yeah, we'll hook up in real life. That'd be awesome. That will be really cool. So I'll look forward to that.
Man.
Okay,
I think we're gonna,
right.
Everywhere that has land at the end of it, we're going to hit up like Ireland, Scotland, England, and then we're going to throw Wales in the mix too.
Yeah, well land. Yeah. Close.
Wales land.
Right. So yeah, indeed. So how is somebody's like myself now very interested in your stuff? Can we find you?
Very good question. On the interwebs, so multiple ways. My whole way, when you ask me my way, Ecstatic Existence, type that into a search engine and you'll find lots of that, okay? So there's ecstaticexistence.com. That's my primary website. And on there, you can find all kinds of different things. I have my Magick Of Mudras videos there. And you can also sign up for something called a self-discovery session, which is the intro way to work with me privately. It's an amazing session that I totally am constantly surprised by the results I get with people. So what you'll do is you'll receive an in-depth questionnaire about every single aspect of your life: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual, spatial. And you go through that on your own. And then within a week, we meet up in a 2-hour Skype session privately and discuss. And so some people, I've heard the question before of, if it's a self-discovery session, why am I needed? Why can't I just turn them loose on their own, right? And the answer is pretty simple. Sometimes we need somebody else to tell us we have a smear of mustard on our face, right? We need that little bit of outside perspective to just kind of like show you something that you might not be looking at, that might not be apparent to you. Because all of us are living our lives, right, with these blinders. We only have these 2 eyes. So like at this moment, I'm looking at you. I can see approximately 45% of this room. Everything back there, I can't see it all right now. So sometimes you need somebody else that's sitting across the room looking at your whole scene, and then they can help you out. So self-discovery session, it's an awesome tool and really opens the door. That's a prerequisite to doing any further work with me. Then also, you can check out the Ecstatic Existence podcast. I produce and host, along with my lovely wife, the Ecstatic Existence podcast. You can find it on Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes, and we interview leaders in health, wellness, spirituality, and conscious thought from around the planet. So check that out. It's really cool. We got a lot of topics, huge array of topics on the show. And what else? Oh, Ecstatic Existence on YouTube, Facebook page, you name it. And if you want to reach out to me directly with a question about anything covered in this program or beyond, you can get to me at ecstaticexistence@gmail.com.
Very cool.
Awesome. Cool. That is awesome. And what I'll do is, or if you can send me a couple of links, and I will put them in the information on this video. What I normally do is you have this live feed video, then I'll create some teasers, and I'll also create an edited version where basically we shut up me and Ethan and just have you talking most of the time. And what I do, I'll send you them, but I'll make sure that all your links are in them as well. Okay?
Fantastic.
Cool. Awesome. Right. Okay. So don't disappear. But what we'll do, the show itself will end the show. So I hope you guys out there and in the future, because I know I get a lot of people 4 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly the views go up to about 60 people in the first day. So you're watching this, if you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, to contact Daniel. Like I say, I will leave links below, and see you next week for another show. But for now, it's goodbye from Ethan.
Bye.
It's goodbye from the questioner.
Bye.
It's goodbye from the gracious and mighty and very awesome Daniel.
Be well, everybody. Love you.
And it's goodbye from me. So take care. Love, Chin Shen from the Way of Conscious Mindfulness, and bye bye.